U.S. presidential envoy Keith Kellogg is set to arrive in Kyiv ahead of Ukraine's Independence Day celebrations. His visit carries both symbolic and political weight at a time when the war and diplomacy are at a critical point. Kellogg is expected to join a prayer breakfast and take part in official ceremonies marking the country's independence. Beyond the public events, he will also hold meetings with Ukrainian leaders and foreign diplomats in the capital. The trip comes at the end of a week of intense negotiations between Washington, Kyiv, and European partners. Discussions have focused not only on how to sustain military support, but also on the shape of future security guarantees for Ukraine, a question at the heart of efforts to end the war in terms that protect the country's sovereignty. Kellogg's arrival underscores the American role in these talks, and he is expected to discuss both the broader diplomatic push and the security guarantees now being drafted. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has firmly rejected Russia's attempt to be included in discussions on Ukraine's post-war security guarantees. Speaking during a meeting with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte in Kyiv, Zelenskyy dismissed Moscow's demand, insisting that as the aggressor, Russia has forfeited any right to shape Ukraine's security future. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had previously warned that excluding Russia from these talks would be a road to nowhere, referring to early 2022 proposals that would have allowed Moscow significant oversight over Ukraine's military arrangements. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal underscores the Kremlin's insistence on veto power over any Western proposed guarantees, highlighting how this red line continues to block progress on a lasting peace. Further, The Guardian reports that Russia also opposes Western troops in Ukraine and wants to return to discussions around the 2022 Istanbul framework, which Kyiv regards as a thinly veiled attempt to impose a security structure that legitimizes aggression. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the United States has, for the first time, shown readiness to join in providing security guarantees for Kyiv. Speaking alongside NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte in Kyiv, Zelenskyy said talks are underway every day at military, diplomatic and advisory levels to shape concrete protections. He stressed the ultimate goal is to achieve guarantees comparable to Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, meaning a commitment to collective defense.
The United States is ready to be part of the security guarantees for Ukraine. And this is the first time we have achieved such readiness. Now, in fact, every day there are talks about the specific details of these guarantees, at the level of security advisors, at the level of our military, and at the level of diplomats from all our teams. Yesterday was the call of Ukraine, the whole of Europe, and the United States of America. Today we will continue this work. I am grateful to everyone who is involved in this. The overall goal, as formulated both in dialogue and with our partners, should be guarantees like Article 5 of the NATO Treaty. These are truly effective security guarantees, and this is exactly the result we must achieve.
Zelenskyy warned that Moscow continues to use ultimatums and stalling tactics to block any progress toward peace, adding that Russia is pressing to prevent Washington from applying its full sanctions power. He emphasized that the Kremlin strategy is to avoid meetings and delay negotiations indefinitely. Still, Zelenskyy underlined that Ukraine remains ready for talks. Russian dictator Putin is using old KGB tactics and even the philosophy of judo to manage Donald Trump during stalled peace negotiations, according to an analysis published in The Telegraph. Rebecca Koffler, a former U.S. military intelligence officer, argues that Putin aims to keep Trump engaged, flattering him and delaying any real consequences, such as secondary sanctions, while Russia continues its exhausting military campaign against Ukraine. She writes that Putin relies on techniques from intelligence tradecraft, Cold War-era psychological warfare, and the principles of judo, which focus on destabilizing an opponent's balance. The Russian leader never openly criticizes Trump, instead praising his intelligence and pragmatism while appealing to his desire of a Nobel Prize and his sympathy for victims of war. One method, known as reflexive control, involves shaping an adversary's perception of reality. Koffler suggests Trump is especially vulnerable to this because of his belief that any conflict can be solved with deal-making and that Putin reasons like an American negotiator. One of the key instruments in this strategy is flattery, a classic technique used by intelligence handlers to manipulate their targets. Analysts note that Putin has carefully cultivated Trump's vanity rather than ever confronting him directly.
Flattery is one of the techniques spy handlers like Putin employ to appeal to their prospective assets' vanity. Putin has never spoken negatively about Trump. Instead, he tends to praise Trump's political acumen and personality, describing him as intelligent, experienced, talented, clever, and pragmatic. In January, Putin said that he and Trump always had a businesslike, pragmatic but also trusting relationship.
According to Koffler, Putin has likely already mapped out his next moves, perhaps releasing a small number of abducted Ukrainian children in response to Melania Trump's recent letter, or inventing other tactics to buy more time. His broader strategy, she says, is to exhaust Trump until the US president either abandons the talks or agrees to Russia's demands. The analysis comes as Trump continues to set new two-week deadlines for progress, but has so far avoided imposing sanctions on Moscow, instead pressing Kyiv to negotiate. A recent piece in the Wall Street Journal titled "Europe is Losing" has stirred debate in the international press. The authors ask whether Europe, once a leading global power, is now turning into a passive bystander of history. The article notes that over recent decades, European nations have fallen far behind the United States and China in both economic dynamism and military strength. It highlights examples, whereas several European companies once ranked among the global top 10 by market capitalization, today the highest-ranked European firm is only in 28th place. High energy cost, excessive regulation, and an aging population are seen as major obstacles to innovation and industrial growth. In the military sphere, Europe has also lost ground. After decades of prioritizing social policies, the continent now has one of the lowest levels of military capability in modern history. This has been exposed in Russia's war against Ukraine. While the United States remains the primary provider of weapons and security guarantees, European nations often appear as secondary players. Diplomatically, too, the article stresses Europe has looked more passive. In key negotiations over Ukraine, it is the United States and other powers that set the framework, while China has shown little interest in engaging, while the European Union. Still, there are calls for change. Former European Central Bank chief Mario Draghi has urged sweeping reforms, including the creation of unified energy and financial markets, investment in startups, and the enhancement of the defense industry. Yet the authors argue bureaucracy and political inertia across Europe stand in the way of any real breakthrough. Ukraine is marking its National Flag Day, celebrating the blue and yellow banner as a symbol of unity, freedom, and defiance. The holiday, established in 2004, has taken on a new meaning during the full-scale war. The flag now flies on the front lines, in liberated towns, and in occupied areas where people wait to raise it again. For many Ukrainians, it embodies both the sacrifices of the past and the promise of a future. At the ceremony in Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy underscored what the flag represents in the face of Russian aggression.
This flag is a feeling of salvation for the people we bring back from Russian captivity. When they see it, they understand that the evil has passed. Our flag is the goal and the dream for many of our people in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. They cherish this flag because they know we will never give our land to the occupier.
The blue and yellow flag, first raised in Lviv during the Spring of Nations in 1848, is now a rallying symbol carried by soldiers, volunteers, and citizens determined to defend Ukraine's independence. That's all for now. For more content, please subscribe.